Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the Honors Colloquium today. And I'm Dr. Leslie Rawlings. I'm the advisor for Haley Price. And she is the daughter of Timothy and Kimberly Price of Beatrice, Nebraska. Haley graduated from Beatrice High School in 2021. She is majoring in secondary social sciences education with an endorsement in reading and writing for grades 7 through 12. While at Wayne State College, Haley's been extremely active. She's the treasurer of Phi Alpha Theta, vice president of Theta Eta Sigma, and a member of Gamma Theta Epsilon Pi Gamma Mu and Philomathian, which represent the following honor societies: history, trio, geography, social sciences, and the Wayne State College President Honorary Society. Haley will graduate in December of 2024 with plans to become a high school social studies educator. And she is going to present on the topic completing Nebraska geography standards using GIS. And here is her honors cord that I'm going to present to her that she can wear during graduation.
Thank you, Dr. Owens. As she said, my name is Haley Price, and I'm doing my honors project over how to complete Nebraska geography standards using GIS. So the outline of my presentation today is that we're going to go over what are state standards and how do they apply to education, what GIS is and the definition of it, and the careers that use it, my research objective and the focus of my studies, the benefits of using GIS in a classroom, my literature review where I will go over selected studies that I read about and did research on, and then the challenges that are a part of using GIS in a classroom, and then the conclusion, I'll go back over why it should be used. So Nebraska state standards for geography. State standards are skills that students need to understand by the end of their high school level or the grade level that they're at. In this case, I'm doing geography, which is a subfield of the social sciences. For high school levels, they do 9 through 12 altogether, and then you just have the state standards that must be completed by the end of high school due to certain schools teach different topics at different times. There's 5 sub-areas within the geography state standards, and these are location and place, which is describing why and where people and places and environments happen where they are. Evaluating regions, such as evaluating why these regions form and how they change over time. The human-environmental interactions is how nature and humans have interacted together in order for humans to adapt to the lands that they're on. Movement and migrations is looking at how human population and cultures change a certain space over time at a local, a national, and a global scale. And then we have geospatial and geoliteracy skills, which are evaluating issues and events by using geographical knowledge and geospatial skills to make informed decisions. Like I said, Nebraska does all of these 9 through 12 together, so you're going to be hitting these state standards multiple times as you're teaching geography. So Nebraska state statute is why we have to have state standards in Nebraska. Nebraska just revised this statute that requires the use of state standards in the schools. The paragraph below is the state statute that requires this, and a part of the state statute is that every 7 years, the sub-area or the content area you're looking at, those standards have to be revised and have corrections made to it in order to influence better education in the future. The last time that the social sciences, which is where geography are at, was looked at was 2019, and it will be revised again in 2026. So what is GIS? GIS is short for Geographic Information System, and it's a computer system for digital mapping of information and data. What you're mapping is going to show you patterns, such as determining where certain events occur and how often they occur, setting up patterns in what the geography and nature is showing us. Determining optimal routes, such as if you're going to build onto an area, where should we put our route in order for travel to become easier, more effective, and just to help increase the use of the land that we have. And selecting suitable sites for development. If a town's going to, let's say, put in a new residence hall or an apartment building, they can use GIS to look at the land and find out where is the best area to put this in order to make the best use of our land and resources for allowing for more growth. So there's many careers that do use GIS. City administrators and city planners will use this, like I said, if you're going to build something new, they can use GIS in order to make informed decisions before they start the building process. Environmentalists and conservationists will use this to look at the land, what's affecting the land, how can they improve it, and how can they keep the land so that it's being used for the best reasons. Archaeologists will look at GIS when examining past sites for, let's say, if they're looking for Native American cultures and they're looking at the land, they can use GIS to see what the land is like, what the patterns of the land is in order to help find out what is going on in an area. And historians are going to use it in order to connect past and present events in order to help make conclusions on what was going on. So my research objective was to identify how to use GIS in a secondary classroom and how to complete the Nebraska standards using it. Like I said, there are 5 different sub-areas with geography on this one, and each of my studies at some point each of these were in on, and I was allowed to do more research on how to use them in the geography classroom. And in my case, I used studies from around the world, including different countries, and different studies and what they were doing, and used those studies and related what the students were learning in those objectives and comparing it to how Nebraska wants teachers to use GIS. So the benefits of using GIS in the classroom. There's a lot of them. I'm going to go through a few of them though. It allows for an in-depth analysis of places around the world. Students and users are able to look at a certain selected place around the world, and they can dive into what is the culture there based off of the geography. If there's a lot of mountains, then that's going to be different than a place that has a lot of beaches. Geography is going to explain a lot about what a culture does and how it adapts. Students get to work with technology. Throughout my research on this, every case that I looked at pointed out that technology is a motivation for students to continue to engage with their work and to help them be more motivated when it came to working. So students with GIS, with it being an online platform, they are using technology and they're able to explore mapping and geography with it. GIS is a hands-on application that allows for students to create their own maps and analyze data that they gather. Students are doing their own mapping, they're working on their own computer, they're able to create something, and that is what helps kinesthetic learners especially, is that learning by doing, and GIS allows for that type of learning to take place that isn't able to happen if you're in a different type of classroom. And to build on that, it creates a student-centered environment rather than a teacher-centered one, where the students are doing their own learning. They're able to focus on how they are doing the activity. They're being led with a worksheet or with what the teacher's saying, but they're doing it themselves. They're able to add the layers that they want. They're able to gain their own conclusions based off of their research. Rather than a teacher-centered one, which would be more like a lecture-based, where the teacher's up here just lecturing and the students are writing down notes. So one area that GIS can be used is the Geographic Educators of Nebraska, GEON for short. This is a resource for Nebraska teachers to help find activities for students to use GIS and connect to what they're learning in the classroom. They have a diverse set of lessons that allow for history and geography to be combined together, because in a 9 to 12 classroom, more than likely your geography teaching is being taught in your history class. So it allows for the history standards and the geography standards to come together and allow for the students to learn multiple standards within a shorter activity. And then the materials all focus on Nebraska. This is giving students their own personal connection to the material. The students are being able to search up what is affecting Nebraska and how does that affect them living here. The students are more focused because this is our home versus if they were studying a different region or a different country. Students are just going to engage better with it. GEON allows full lesson plans, like I said before, and these are very evident on certain areas of Nebraska are focused on, so you can do one that's more their hometown or all over Nebraska, where it's certain issues that affect the whole state. So my first study was completed in 2014. This one was over the Great Migration, which was a time period between 1910 and 1970, where about 6 million African Americans were moving from the South and into the northern, Midwest, and Western states of America. The state standards that were addressed in this one was location and place, because they focused on Chicago Migration because of the movement of people from the south into other states. Regions because it broke it down into just the Midwest for this study. And then geospatial skills because the students are learning how to interact with GIS and drawing conclusions from the use of it. In this study, they found that the students were able to take time periods and multiple maps and combine their knowledge together, such as looking at a map from 1920 that showed population changes and maps of like 1960 where there was a different type of movement, and they were able to notice the changes in how the population grew and how migration affected different neighborhoods. My second study was done in 2020. This was a Slovakian study where students in Slovakia were looking at various demographics of their home country, Hungary, and Canada. They were looking at demographics such as birth rate and infant mortality in a certain region, and then explaining 2 reasons why this region was experiencing it. So whenever they were looking at Hungary, they were looking at why is there such a lower birth rate compared to their home country, and why Canada had a higher rate. There's the standards addressed here with regions and then geoliteracy regions because they were selecting a certain country, and that was their main focus for part of that activity. And then they were comparing and contrasting that data and what it was telling them in order to build conclusions on why certain countries have higher and lower birth rates or higher and lower infant mortality rates. And demographics are just key components of geography. These can explain, they're just more of like the facts of an area, and that's really important for students to be able to connect that data and then the physical geography of a region to explain what is going on in a country and why it's occurring. My third study was done in 2019. It was a Romanian study where students picked a region of the world and evaluated demographics again, but on a certain region. So students could focus on like Western Asia or Eastern Asia or the Middle East or South America, and they were focusing on why this region was having some of the facts and demographics that they were having. They broke down the region even into 2 countries that they had to then list and then say, here's 2 reasons why this country is having this type of data. Like for instance, one student chose to study China. They explained that China was having a lower lower population change and a lower birth rate due to the one-child policy that had been put in place. Students then were able to learn about these and learn why past impacts the present and how the past and the present work together into facing the issues that people and helping face the issues of people living there, such as understanding that the one-child policy was leading to a lower birth rate and therefore a lower population in China. My fourth study was completed in 2021. And then my students in this study were able to examine the relationship between tectonic plate movements and earthquakes. The students were again looking at their home country. They were able to examine why Turkey is so prone to having earthquakes and what's the understand the relationship between tectonic plate movements and earthquakes, meaning that if you have more tectonic plate movements, you're going to have more earthquakes. Students were able to connect this with their studies of using GIS. The state standards that we're focused on with this one were human environmental interactions because Turkey is adapting to these issues that they have. Therefore, the students were able to see how their country is working to help keep them safe during earthquakes, looking at why cities are built away from tectonic plate lines, or the ones that are, how prone are they to earthquakes. They were just able to see how they've adapted to these changes. And then geospatial skills again, because they were using their maps and they were adding layers, such as earthquakes, tectonic plates, in order to visualize and see what was going on with their country. One part that students really need to learn, that I learned in this study, is that students need to understand the major types of movements for the tectonic plates, whether it's divergent, convergent, or transfer plate movements, because these all affect the type of geographical outcomes we're going to have based off of what type of movement the plates are having. Okay, and then the problems with GIS. Throughout my studies, a lot of these 3 issues kept coming up in multiple of my studies. The first being a lack of technology available. Some schools only have a certain amount of technology or computers that they allow or that they have, and due to state standards and the fact, or state testing, and the fact that English, math, and science have state testing that needs to be done, social sciences may not get the computers because they want their students to be more prepared for their standardized testing. This was one issue is that schools weren't allowing for computers to be moved out of those core subject areas, and therefore GIS was not able to be used. Many educators are not comfortable with the technology because GIS had a slow incoming into the education world. It started in the 1960s, but with the development of the internet and internet being used in the classrooms, about the 1990s we started seeing it being used, but it's slowly being worked into the normal classrooms. Therefore, educators don't feel like they understand it, they don't know how to use it, and so therefore they're not going to make their students do something that they don't understand themselves. And then it takes too much time. Because GIS can take a little while for students to understand how to use and how to use it correctly and get the data that they need for their lessons, it does take time away from content. And because there is so much to the social sciences field, especially if you're using it in a history classroom where you're doing history standards and geography standards, you're taking less time away from events that you need to go through as a teacher, and therefore teachers aren't using it because they feel like if they do introduce GIS in the classroom, they're not going to get through everything that they need to. So overcoming the challenges. This is what schools need to do in order to have a successful GIS inclusion into their classrooms. Students need technology, that's computers or laptops that connect to the internet, and that the internet is stable enough to keep them on there so that they can get through their lessons and their activities without forfeiting being cut off from it, or just instead they need to be able to have that constant ability to stay on the software. Time is needed for students to learn the material, and it will take time for the students to feel comfortable with it, so it might be best to use it at the beginning of the year where students can practice using it, and then using it throughout the year or the semester based off of the school that you go to, so that they can use it regularly and get more and more comfortable with it, because then it will take less time to do more activities because they understand how to use the software. And then teachers need more training to understand how to teach with GIS. There needs to be more awareness of bringing GIS into the classroom, therefore it takes sending teachers to conferences where they talk about using GIS, or being able to get them to just sit down during like maybe a professional development time and learning how to use it. It's going to help with teachers being able to use it in the classroom. And then schools need to figure out how to implement it before it's brought in. You can't just say, we're going to use GIS. They need to understand how to use it and how are their students going to be able to use it. So one way to overcome this is to allow for one-to-one technology. That is, every student has their own computer or laptop, and allowing for them to work with it in order for every student to be able to do their own map and data collection, because that's what's been proven the most to help students. In conclusion, GIS allows for a student-centered learning. This allows the students to take control over what they're learning in their high school history and geography classrooms. It's allowing for them to do their own work, and they feel in control of their learning. When they feel in control of their own learning, they're going to be more motivated, more engaged with the material, and therefore they're going to have a higher success with using it because they do feel more comfortable using it. A GIS activity can cover multiple state standards. Like when I said using GEON, it allows for history and geography state standards to be merged together in order for a clear picture of what was going on in the past and how it impacts the future. And then as well as multiple of these studies showed that you can use multiple geography standards in one lesson because of the impact that it has throughout. Geography is a very connected area when it comes to their state standards, and therefore one activity can hit on 2 or 3 of these state standards at one time, allowing for more practice and more use of that state standard before they graduate high school. And then it allows for students to feel more prepared when they're using careers in GIS. If a career involves looking at geography or looking at mapping, GIS is going to benefit them. If the students have knowledge in using GIS, they're going to be more prepared for their career field and going to be able to use this technology in order to make more informed decisions when they're older in their line of work, or being able to tell their employers that they have used GIS, they're comfortable using it, and that's going to help them in the future with jobs. And then it allows for a higher level of learning. GIS is very much on the higher end of Bloom's taxonomy, which is a study that allows showing that students, when they do certain activities, it's helping them learn more or they're applying it more. And in this case, GIS does a lot of creating and evaluating, which are on the higher top scales of Bloom's taxonomy, which means that they're getting the most out of their learning, they're being able to apply what they're doing, and using it in multiple ways in order to reach a higher level of thinking. So now I have time for questions and answers. Is there anything that you guys have questions about?
Did you conduct these studies during your practical hours, or did you have to go